Okay, so generative AI, it's everywhere these days, right? I mean, it's doing incredible things.
Yeah, it really is.
But uh, if you've spent any time building with it, or even just relying on these AI applications,
Mm,
you've probably noticed that well, sometimes things go a little bit sideways.
absolutely.
Unexpected outputs, little performance hiccups here and there,
Yeah.
and it can feel like you're really in the dark when it comes to troubleshooting these things.
Mhm.
So if that resonates with you, this is the deep dive for you.
Yeah, I think for anyone working with these cutting edge AI systems, the complexity can be really daunting. You have all these interconnected steps happening,
Yeah.
and it's not always obvious where things are going wrong. So if you're tired of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, we're going to unpack a solution today that gives you that much needed visibility.
That solution is LangSmith. So essentially, it's like this specialized toolkit built for debugging and observability, but specifically for generative AI.
Right.
It's like X-ray vision into your AI processes.
I like that analogy. And what makes LangSmith even more powerful is that it's not limited to just one framework.
Right.
It plays well with LangChain, Llama Index. You can even use it with your own custom Python code. As long as you're working with LLMs, LangSmith can provide those valuable insights.
So at the end of the day, it's about giving you, the developer, that control and understanding of how your AI is actually working, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so LangSmith is all about giving us this understanding. What can it actually do? What are those core capabilities?
Well, there are a few key features. One of the most important is real-time monitoring.
Okay.
So think of it as getting the vital signs of your AI. You can track things like latency, throughput, token usage, and errors.
So latency, that's like how long your AI takes to
Yeah,
respond,
right.
like the wait time.
Yeah,
And throughput, that's kind of like the speed.
exactly. It's how quickly it can process requests.
Makes sense. And tokens are, well, they're like the currency of language for these models.
Yeah, they're the building blocks, and tracking them helps you understand how much you're using, which is tied to cost.
Got it. So it's almost like having a dashboard for your AI's health.
Precisely. And then it goes deeper than that with detailed logging. So LangSmith captures all those step-by-step execution traces. These are called runs.
Okay.
So you can really see the whole thought process.
So you can kind of rewind.
Yeah, exactly, like a rewind button. If something goes wrong, you can pinpoint exactly where it happened. And then following from that, you have trace analysis,
Okay.
where you can review these past executions. You can even replay them and make little tweaks to see how it changes the outcome.
So you can play around with solutions and experiment a bit.
Exactly. And beyond that, LangSmith also helps with evaluating your AI and gathering feedback.
Okay.
You can create data sets to test it quantitatively. You can collect feedback directly from users, which is super valuable for fine-tuning those outputs.
Right.
And of course, for anyone watching the bottom line, it tracks your costs and token usage very meticulously.
So you get that granular view of the individual processes and also the bigger picture of performance and cost.
Now, why is all this so crucial specifically for generative AI? I mean, what makes it so different from traditional software development?
Well, you've got to remember the nature of these workflows. They tend to be pretty complex.
Yeah,
Multiple steps, some sequential, some parallel.
right.
And that complexity just makes it a lot more likely to get those unpredictable outputs. Or maybe you have hidden performance bottlenecks.
Okay.
And that's where LangSmith shines. It helps you pinpoint exactly where things are going wrong, optimize each individual part, and continuously refine your models and prompts using actual data. It gives you that control over your costs, which can really balloon with these powerful models.
Mm.
And unlike those general-purpose monitoring tools out there, LangSmith gets LLMs. It's built with them in mind.
So LangSmith comes from the LangChain ecosystem, but it's broader than that.
Right. It definitely integrates seamlessly with LangChain, but it's not limited to it.
It's really meant to be used with any application that leverages LLMs. So even if LangChain isn't your whole stack, if you have LLMs at the core, LangSmith can still bring a lot to the table.
Okay, let's dig into that monitoring aspect a little more.
Yeah.
What's that real-time view actually look like for the user?
Well, LangSmith provides real-time metrics through these intuitive dashboards.
Okay.
So you can visualize all those key performance indicators we talked about: latency, throughput, error rates, resource usage. It's all presented in a very clear and accessible way. You also get session and project tracking, which is super helpful for grouping related runs.
Okay.
That way, you can see how your application's performance changes over time as you make adjustments. You can see if those tweaks are actually working.
Makes sense. You want to make sure your changes are having the desired effect.
Yeah.
Now, what about the logging? How detailed are we talking here?
The logging in LangSmith is incredibly detailed. You get execution logs for each step in your AI workflow. So for every run, you can see the exact inputs, the generated outputs, and any errors. Plus, you have traceability, so you can link logs across different stages of your workflow.
All right.
And you can even add manual annotations or user feedback directly into the system. It's all about getting that complete picture. And if you need to integrate with existing systems, LangSmith can export data to tools like Prometheus or Grafana.
So it's not a black box anymore. You can actually trace the entire journey.
Right.
Now, you talked about trace analysis, which is essentially debugging for AI.
Right.
Tell us a little more about that.
So instead of trying to debug this complex live system, LangSmith records everything. It captures these detailed traces of every single execution.
Okay.
So you can go back later and do what we call post hoc trace analysis.
Post-hoc, so after the fact.
Exactly. You review those recorded traces to find those inputs that might be causing unexpected behavior or those bottlenecks or the origin of specific errors.
Okay.
And then comes the really cool part. You can replay these past runs. You can take a previous execution, change something, maybe tweak a prompt or a parameter and rerun it.
Okay.
And since you have LangSmith hooked up, you'll see a new trace.
Makes sense.
And you can compare those two traces and see if your change actually fixed the issue.
That's really efficient. No need to disrupt your live system or your users. You also mentioned datasets and evaluation. How does LangSmith play into that?
Right. So LangSmith lets you create sets of inputs, and you tell it what the expected outputs should be. Then you can run your AI chains over these data sets and see how it performs.
Like a test suite.
Exactly. It gives you a quantitative way to measure things, make sure everything's still working as expected.
Gotcha. And for the budget-conscious folks out there, how does the cost and token tracking work?
LangSmith keeps a close eye on how many tokens you're using, which directly relates to cost.
Right.
It provides you with operational insights so you can understand where those resources are going. That's essential for budgeting.
Makes sense. And how does LangSmith help in getting that valuable user feedback, from the people actually using our AI?
Well, it lets you collect that feedback directly on the execution traces.
Okay.
So, for example, users can give a rating, maybe add a comment.
Oh, I see.
That creates this really useful feedback loop to refine your prompts and models based on what users are actually experiencing.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp of what LangSmith is and what it can do.
Yeah.
But let's go back to why all this is so critical in the world of generative AI.
Yeah.
You talked about complexity, but can you make it even more concrete?
Sure. Let's imagine a real-world generative AI application, maybe a chatbot.
Okay.
You have the user's question coming in. Then you need to craft a prompt based on that, send it to the LLM, maybe even multiple LLMs, retrieve information from a database, process the response, and finally deliver the answer back to the user.
It's a lot of moving parts.
Exactly. And with so many things happening, the potential for things to go wrong, for those unexpected outputs, or for performance bottlenecks to crop up, it's huge.
It's like a complex machine. If one gear slips, the whole thing can break down.
Exactly. And that's where LangSmith really shines. It gives you that granularity to pinpoint exactly where the issue is. Maybe it's a poorly written prompt, or a slow API call, or a problem with data retrieval.
Okay.
And then you can optimize each individual component, refine the prompt, tweak the model's parameters, make your data access more efficient.
So it's not just about fixing problems after they happen.
No, it's also about being proactive.
Right.
You can use those quantitative evaluations from your dataset testing and that qualitative user feedback to continuously improve your models.
Got it.
Plus, keeping a close eye on your token usage and costs, that's vital for staying within budget.
You mentioned earlier that LangSmith is specifically designed for generative AI.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice? How does it differ from a general purpose monitoring tool?
Well, a typical APM might tell you that an API endpoint is slow, but LangSmith, because it understands LLMs, it can tell you exactly which LLM call within your chain is causing the problem. It shows you the prompt, the model's raw output.
Wow.
It gets those core concepts like prompts, tokens, chains.
Right.
That contextual understanding is so valuable for diagnosing those very specific issues you encounter in generative AI. Things like prompt injection, or when the model just starts behaving bizarrely.
This is all fascinating. For someone listening who's thinking, I need this, what does it take to actually set up LangSmith?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, especially if you're already in a Python environment, which is common for LLM applications.
Okay.
First things first, install the necessary packages. You'll need LangChain, LangSmith, and the client library for your LLM provider.
But using OpenAI, you'd need their library.
Exactly. And that's usually a simple pip install command.
Pip install LangChain, LangSmith, OpenAI.
You got it. Just replace OpenAI with whatever provider you're using.
Simple enough. What's next?
The easiest way is to use environment variables. That way, tracing happens automatically without needing to change your code too much. You set LangChain tracing v2 to true, and then you provide your LangSmith API key using LangChain API key.
Okay, so you need to get your own API key from LangSmith.
Right, and optionally, you can set the endpoint and your project name using LangChain endpoint and LangChain project.
Got it.
And don't forget to set the API key for your LLM provider, like OpenAI API key.
So it's mostly about configuring these environment variables before I run my AI code.
That's it. Once they're set, LangChain will automatically start logging everything to LangSmith. For example, let's say you have a basic language model chain. When you execute it, LangSmith captures everything. The prompt, the API communication, the model's response.
Cool.
You see the exact prompt, the tokens used, the full output, all on your LangSmith dashboard.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned a more advanced way for those who need finer control.
Yes. If you need to log custom data or have very specific needs, you can use the LangSmith client directly in your code. You import the client class, create an instance using your API key, and then use methods like client.log. It gives you a lot of flexibility.
Makes sense. Let's get practical. Imagine we have that customer support bot, and it's giving these nonsensical, hallucinated responses sometimes.
Right.
How would I use LangSmith to figure out what's going wrong?
First, you'd go to your LangSmith dashboard and find the run where the bot gave the bad response.
Okay.
Then you dive into that detailed trace. It's like a step-by-step breakdown of everything that happened. You see the user input, the prompts, the calls to the LLM, the outputs, the latency, and any errors.
So I can see the whole path that led to the bad answer.
Exactly. You'd focus on the prompts generation. Was the user's question correctly understood and put into the prompt?
Okay.
For example, let's say your prompt is answer concisely, question. If that question part isn't filled in correctly, the model is going to be confused.
Right. Wouldn't know what to answer.
You also want to check how the bot interacts with its knowledge sources. Were there any errors retrieving information? Was the information even relevant? And look out for any unusual delays during those API calls.
Got it. And once I've found a problem, let's say the prompt is messed up, how do I test a fix?
You can't pause the live system and tinker in real time, but that's where replay and iteration come in.
Okay.
You take the details of that problematic run, go back to your code, fix the prompt logic, and rerun the exact same user input.
Okay.
Because LangSmith is running in your development environment, that new execution gets logged as well. You can compare the two traces and see if your fix worked.
It's like a controlled experiment.
Exactly. You recreate the conditions, apply your fix, and see if the trace looks healthy.
Makes sense. You also mentioned a mermaid diagram. Can you quickly explain how that helps visualize this process?
Right. So the diagram showed the flow of data. The user's query enters the LangChain workflow. It goes through the prompt creation, the LLM, maybe some external APIs, and finally the output goes back to the user. And all along the way, LangSmith is recording everything as a trace. You then analyze these traces on the dashboard, and based on what you learn, you adjust your code, refine your prompts, and then you replay the scenario to verify your fix.
It's a nice way to see the big picture. Now, what are some best practices for using LangSmith effectively?
Well, one key practice is modular instrumentation.
Okay.
Log each component of your AI chain separately. That way, when you're looking at a trace, it's much easier to find the problem spot.
Makes sense. Break it down into smaller pieces.
Also set up alerts. If latency goes above a certain limit or your error rate spikes, you want to be notified.
Catch problems early.
Exactly. As for logging details, capture those inputs and outputs for your LLM calls, but always be careful about user privacy. Don't log any PII you don't absolutely need.
Right. Keep it secure.
It's also a good idea to regularly check your LangSmith dashboard, even when there are no obvious problems.
Just to keep an eye on things.
Right. You might spot subtle performance issues or weird patterns. And if you have specific use cases, leverage dataset testing. Run your chains against those carefully curated datasets and track your progress. And don't forget about user feedback. Use LangSmith's annotation features to get insights from real users. Finally, remember that debugging is often a team effort. Share your LangSmith dashboards with your colleagues. Work together.
Those are some really valuable tips. Any other features we should know about?
Yeah, there's a lot more to explore. We talked about data sets and evaluation, which let you do automated testing and measure performance quantitatively.
Right.
The feedback and annotation tools are great for that continuous improvement loop, getting insights from users and refining your models.
Okay.
And the cost and token tracking helps you understand your expenses and find ways to optimize.
Makes sense.
LangSmith also integrates with external tools like Prometheus and Grafana for those who already have those set up.
So it fits into your existing workflow.
Exactly. And it works perfectly with asynchronous code in LangChain.
It sounds like a very comprehensive toolkit.
Yeah.
What truly sets LangSmith apart from other observability tools out there?
I think it comes down to its deep understanding of LLMs. It's not just a generic monitoring tool.
Right.
It's built from the ground up to understand prompts, tokens, chains.
Okay.
It has those evaluation and feedback features built in. And the way it visualizes traces, it's all designed for the nuances of generative AI. You get insights that you just wouldn't get from a generic tool.
Of course, no tool is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
What are some limitations or considerations?
That's true. While LangSmith is designed to work with different frameworks, it integrates most smoothly with LLM-specific ones like LangChain.
Okay.
There's also a learning curve involved. You need some familiarity with how LLM workflows work to really understand the traces.
Makes sense.
And cost can be a factor. If you're using it heavily, the costs can add up, so be mindful of that. And finally, it's not a replacement for traditional testing. It's a complementary tool to enhance your existing processes.
Gotcha. To really drive home the value, can you tell us more about that financial services firm using LangSmith?
Oh yeah, they had built a customer support chatbot with LangChain and integrated LangSmith right from the start.
Okay.
They were facing those common problems: delays, incorrect answers.
The usual suspects.
Using LangSmith's traces, they found that the delays were often due to slow data retrieval. They optimized those processes and got their average response time down from 5 seconds to 3.5 seconds.
Wow, that's a significant improvement.
And by analyzing the traces of those hallucinated responses, they found specific user inputs that were messing up the prompt.
I see.
They improved their prompt templates, added better error handling, and their error rate plummeted from 12% to 3%.
That's huge.
So they ended up with a much more reliable chatbot, happier customers, and less work for their human support agents.
A real success story. What's next for LangSmith? What can we expect in the future?
Well, the LangChain roadmap suggests some exciting things. They're talking about more granular metrics, AI-driven diagnostics that could offer automated suggestions, expanded integrations with other tools, and even better dataset testing.
It sounds like it's going to get even more powerful.
Absolutely. And the best way to stay up to date is to check out the LangChain community and the official LangSmith documentation.
Great advice. This has been a fantastic deep dive into LangSmith. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
As these generative AI systems get more complex and we rely on them more and more, having the right debugging and observability tools is absolutely essential. LangSmith is built specifically for that, and it gives you the power to build truly reliable and effective AI applications.
So what's the next step for our listeners who want to give LangSmith a try?
To set up tracing using those environment variables we talked about, it's the easiest way to get started. And for a deeper dive, head over to the LangSmith documentation and join the LangChain community. We also want to hear from you. Tell us about your experiences with LangSmith. You can use the GitHub template in the show notes or the hashtag #LangSmithDebugging.
And one final thought to leave you with. Think about how debugging and observability can completely change the way you build and maintain AI. It's not just about fixing problems. It's about understanding your models deeply, constantly improving them, and creating AI applications that are truly robust and reliable.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into LangSmith.
Yeah, thanks for having me.